Well, good morning. Good morning for me, 10 a.m. Pacific time. I hope you're having a great day today. I am more or less just starting my day ish. Um, our kids are away this week. It's spring break, so house is a lot quieter than normal, which is good. Where am I? There I am. Hi. So, what we're going to do today is go through a few questions. Um, if we've never met before, my name's Aaron from Albatross Academy, albatrossacademy.ca, where I help homeowners, clients, as they move through the design, construction process of their hopefully dream homes. And me and my squeaky chair are here. We're back. So yeah, I help my clients move through their design and construction process, primarily in the custom home building industry. A bit of background about me, if we haven't, if you're not, we're not acquainted. I originally was trained in sustainable design, so sustainable design and construction, so environmentally friendly practices and best practices. And I worked in the custom home building industry for a number of years. I'd done a lot of renovation work myself, for myself, just on various homes that I had lived in and sold. And then I moved into the project management, estimating sphere in the custom home building industry and worked in that for a number of years, and then found myself drawn to the design world. So I started designing homes at the same time. I was approached by our local post-secondary institution, local college, and that I had graduated from in the Sustainable Building Technologies program, and they asked me if I'd like to teach in the program, and so I said sure. Then I was still and am still doing my design work for clients, and one thing that it was a common occurrence, I'll say, in my design work and in my construction project management work, was that clients needed help, and they needed help in ways that I didn't fully expect. So they needed help, understanding what their responsibilities were in the build. They needed help understanding when they needed to do certain things, and they also needed help, basically, I'll say emotional help. But I'll say the emotional stability and positivity came from basically from having information and knowing that they were on top of things, and knowing that the builder was on top of things, and knowing that their budget was secure, and knowing that their schedule was running on time. And I found that in my project management days, that I found a lot of my time was spent instructing the clients on the process of construction, on the process of building, and the process of documentation, and basically the entire construction process in general. And the more that I did that for my clients in the project management sphere, luxury high-end custom homes, the more I found the better I found my projects went. So I got into, starting earlier this year, I'll say fall of 25, I started thinking to myself, gosh, I think that, more so than just my college students, and more so than just my design clients, I feel like I can offer the wider construction world an insight and my experience level, and help people as they move through their own projects. So that's, if we don't know each other, that's how Albatross Academy was born, and which I'm still developing. This is still somewhat early days, so I'm getting acquainted with YouTube, with Instagram, getting acquainted with that whole world. I'm not a social media guy outside of work, so This has been a really fun and exciting learning curve for me. It's been really great interacting with people in a lot of different forums and areas, and it's been great to see the reaction of people that I have been able to advise and excuse me, to help also. So, as if I haven't mentioned, I'm live here on YouTube every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, just for about an hour, and it's just for a way to check in and a way for me to stay in touch with people. And what I basically do is I compile. If you've got any questions for me and you missed the live streaming, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I can be found at aaron@albatrossacademy.ca, and reach out to me directly. And if you have any questions about maybe your specific project or general construction questions about how something works, I'm happy to answer it all. And if I don't get back to you, then tune in here in our live stream to see, and I'll try to get to those questions. So right now, what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through a few questions, sort of short answer questions that are really common questions for me and really common questions for the internet as well. So we're going to go through that. And then we're going to go through a few case studies. And I really like case studies because they're actual, problems that have happened in the real world. And we can often learn, I feel like, we can learn a lot from case studies, and we can see generally where things have gone sideways. I don't like to use the word gone wrong, although in many cases things do go wrong. But we can see where things have gone sideways, and there are things that we can learn. So that is the plan today. If you have any questions, if you want to jump into the chat, and you have any questions in real time, then obviously please let me know. So a lot of these, I don't mean to refer specifically to videos that I've done already on YouTube, but I have covered a lot of this on YouTube. But I will absolutely, on long form YouTube videos, but I will absolutely go through some of these and cover or recover what, in hopefully a more engaging and shorter version than the long form YouTube. So first question that I get a lot is, how do I know if a builder is actually reputable or just good at sales? So this is a huge, 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 huge question. So huge that I am currently developing a how to hire the right builder course that will help clients select the right builder for their project. Because unless you have an understanding of this industry, and unless you have an understanding of what makes a good builder, what makes a good builder specifically for your project, it's really, really difficult. And I think that's a source of high anxiety for people to know and understand, because if you're not in this industry, you don't know what you don't know. And so understanding that there is a lot to learn here, a lot to know in this field, we'll go through it a little bit. How do I know if a builder is actually reputable or just good at sales? So if it were me and I were hiring a builder, and I do essentially hire a lot of builders, I help my clients hire builders. What I would do, first thing I would start, I'm assuming in this case that you know nobody, that you have no personal connections or once removed personal connections, adjacent connections with anybody in the industry. But firstly, I would start there. So I'm not saying if you even know a builder. If you know a builder and you trust the builder, then obviously go with them. But what I mean is more, let's say you're friends with a plumber. That would be where I would start. Ask a plumber, because people in the trades understand. They talk to other trades. They're in that world all the time, all day, every day. So people in the trades understand who's good to work for, who pays on time, who does quality work, who does poor work. And so that's one really great insight, that if you know somebody who works in the building industry, in the construction industry, talk to them about who might be good and who has a good reputation. Another thing that I would look for that doesn't often get, so I'll go maybe back a little bit and say that if you're looking for a builder and you don't know anybody, and you don't know anybody who knows anybody, then you're likely going to be working strictly off the internet and Googling like builders in my area. And you're going to get a lot of different responses to that search. You're going to get searches, you're going to get companies that have very, very developed websites, and those might be the ones that are quote unquote good at sales. You might get just a little, a teeny little website, and those may be the best quote unquote builders. But one of the things that in my builder's course, that I think is really, really important is hiring the right builder for your project. So what we need to understand when we're hiring a builder for your project is we need to first understand what your project is and what type of builder is going to be a good fit for that. If you're building a deck, if your project is building a relatively standard deck, sun deck, patio, then that's one type of project. That may not be, you don't need and custom home builder probably won't touch that project anyways. So you're looking at a very different profile of builder. You're looking for somebody small that is able to do that type of project and do it well, but also is able to fit that in to their their project list. So identifying what your project is and what size of company is the right company to fit that. If you're building a custom home, then you're going to be looking for custom home builders. You're not going to be looking for guys that build decks. So they may say, now the small guys they'll say they can build anything, right? Everybody might, I always say in this industry that everybody can do everything, right? So if you ask a builder, oh, well, do you know anybody that does tile and they need work? They'll say, oh, I can do tile. Anybody can do anything, right? So now, can they do it well? Can they do it as good as a tiler? Well, probably not. They don't do it all day, every day. So we're looking for the profile of builder that fits your project exactly. If you're doing a renovation, then you can look for renovation contractors specifically. And that can be really an important distinction to make, because people don't always understand that. They think a builder is a builder is a builder. Well, it's not. And so you're looking, we're going to assume for the sake of argument that you're building a custom home. So a builder, how to know if a builder is actually reputable and not just good at sales. So a few things I'd be looking at are the size of the company. The size of the company will tell you a number of things, and there are definitely a few caveats here. The size of the company will tell you, it may tell you how long somebody's been in business. If they have only been in business a short time, but they have grown really, really, really quickly, that is, on the surface, you might think that's a really good thing. For me, that is a red flag, because what ends up happening, and we'll discuss this, I think, in one of the case studies, is that when there's a builder that grows very, very quickly, oftentimes they're growing because they have to, or they're growing because they want to. And the circumstances around growing a construction business very quickly are a little alarming sometimes. And I'm not sure how much I'll leave till the end here, but we'll definitely talk about this later on. But one thing that I would be looking for is, how long have they been in business? How long have they been? How established are they? Are they new, as in like a year, 2 years, 3 years? Not that good builders can't be new, but that's something I'm definitely going to look at. Are they established? How long have they been in the community? If they've been in the community a long time, the likelihood that they're good is higher. And I'll tell you a couple different reasons why. Generally speaking, lower end builders and lower quality builders don't survive the economic cycles, the ebbs and flows of, unless you're in a major larger center, say a million, 500,000 to a million plus people in your city or town. So I'd be looking for, how long have they been in business? But because, as I said, lower end builders they aren't established, and so they don't, and they may not weather those economic cycles, partially because they're probably bad with money, and partially because they just don't have the base, the customer base and the reputation to get work even when things are slow. So I'd be looking at how long, number one, how long they've been in business in it locally. That would be something I would be looking at for sure. And then number two, how do I know a builder is reputable? I would be definitely speaking with some of their past clients. And when I'm speaking with some past clients, what I advise clients to do is you have to be very intentional about your visits with those references, because you're not just walking through a house and going, oh, this looks really nice. You're not just a fan looking at the design. You're there to gather information. And the information that you want to know is pertinent to budget, pertinent to your schedule, pertinent to dispute resolution, pertinent to communication, pertinent to the overall client experience during the build, pertinent to how organized and the builder's processes, and how organized they are and how organized they were. So when you're talking to those references, it's really, really critical that you're there to gather information. And that may seem obvious, but oftentimes people may get stuck in the the design of the house, or I really love the kitchen. You're not there for design inspiration. You're there to gather information. So I'd be looking at the size of the company. I'd be definitely checking past references. And one thing that I always like to do is go to your local hardware stores. Now, hopefully, if you're in a small to medium center, this might be easier to find the hardware stores that this builder is that the builder frequents. And that's when I ask really pointed questions, because the hardware store, they deal with these builders all day, every day. They have a credit relationship with these builders. So the builders do they pay their bills on time? What do clients say? What does the industry say? What do other builders say about these builders? And so when you go to a hardware store and you ask and you say, hey, listen, I'm thinking of using, let's say, Triple T. I'm thinking of using Triple T to build my home. What's your experience been with them? Now, they may not be that excited about throwing somebody under the bus that's a poor builder. So you may have to read between the lines a little bit here, and that may be something that you maybe dance around. They may dance around it a little bit and say, oh yeah, Triple T. Yeah, I mean they're fine. They're fine. Yeah. Versus, oh yeah, those guys are great. Yeah, we've dealt with them for years. They're awesome. Awesome guys and really good reputation. Those are two really different things. Now, they've not explicitly thrown anybody under the bus, but we've gathered some information. We now know, okay, maybe maybe there's some more research that is necessary here. So I think that's really important to do. So I would be talking to there are four things, right? I'd be talking to trades that I know. If I don't know anybody, then I might be, that's fine. So now that I'm gathering information online. And now I'm talking to past references, and I want to know how long they've been in business and what size their crew is. Have they grown really, really quickly? Again, because if they've grown really, really quickly, that often can lead to a drop in quality, because if you hire a whole bunch of people, you don't have time. This is just from a construction company perspective, having worked in this world. If you hire too many people too soon, you don't have time to build that company culture. If you build over a long period of time, you're curating the type of carpenter, the type of worker that you're getting. And if they fit into your company ethos or not, and if they fit into your company culture, if they have the same standards, if they have the same work rate that your company has. So if you hire very quickly and hire a lot very quickly, that can be a bit of a red flag for me. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, I mean, the question, are they just good at sales? There are a number of ways to know. I mean, go with your guts too. I would ask about all those things. I would ask them. I mean, there's a lot to go through here that I go through in my Hire a Builder course. That around, all of those things: dispute resolution. How do they compile their estimate? What's their budget like? How many budget meetings do they do? What's their communication like? All of these things are really, really important for getting the right builder and for ensuring the right client experience as you go. So that is basically probably as good as I can do in the time that I want to spend on that topic. Great question, and one question that I get a ton. Okay, here's one that is a really big one for me. The question is, what is a realistic budget buffer I should add on top of my contractor's quote? So this is a big, big question for a number of reasons, and something I should explain about this. That, and again, I don't go through any of these questions, so I'm just shooting from the hip here. But a realistic budget buffer I should add on my contractor's quote. So there's a few things I should break down here. One is a contract on top of my contractor's quote. So that is assuming to me that you are getting a certain scope of work quoted by a contractor. I do not recommend, absolutely do not recommend, getting an entire home quoted in a fixed price contract. A fixed price contract means a lump sum, one big gigantic price for a home, or a custom, or even a semi-custom home. Here's where I would ask my students if I were in class. I would say, why do you think a fixed price might be a terrible idea for an entire home project? And my students, hopefully, they would say, well, there is too much variability in even a semi-custom home for a contractor not to add, I won't say an obscene, but not to really, really, really pad their quote with profit. Because a contractor, number one thing that they're always trying to do, and rightfully so, is protect themselves. They're risk averse, generally speaking. So they don't want to lose money. They can't afford to lose money, obviously. So they're trying to protect their themselves. So they're going to, if they're giving you a quote for like a whole home price, that price is going to be astronomical compared to what you might get if you might divide that home up into chunks and get a builder to quote everything out. Maybe they can still add their percentage fee on top of that, but the more transparency that you get, the better, and it's not even close in terms of value that customers get. So do not get a whole home contract quoted by a contractor. Also, what that means is that you have to have a very, very, very developed set of drawings, construction drawings, with which to work from if you're getting a whole home quoted. Because the contractor, that is your contract. The drawings are your contract. So if it's not in the contract, the builder is basically under no obligation, or under an obligation to give you the cheapest functional products that are available. That's what they're going to do, because they're going to maximize their profit. So if your drawings don't specify, say, 1/2-inch plywood sheeting for the external walls, and they just specify, approved sheeting, well, you're going to get probably like 3/8 inch. You're going to get a substandard quality of material. That is, you're going to get the bare minimum, the least acceptable by building code. And so anytime that there are gaps in the construction drawings, the contractor, to maximize their profit, is going to spend as little money of their own as they can. So contractors quote for a whole home, I don't recommend it. So let's say that now, just to break this down a little bit, there's a contractor's quote for a specific scope of work. Say it's just foundation framing up to lockup. So what that means is that the contractor will put in a foundation. They will frame the building according to the plans. They will install the windows and the doors, and the roof will be on. And that is what we deem lockup. And that's a milestone. That's a project milestone that is a good delineation point. And that's often when certain subtrades, subcontractors will enter the picture, and when some will leave, i.e. the carpenters. So let's say that they have a really good and defined scope of work. I think that it's really important that a contractor delivers every single thing that is part of their scope of work in their quote. Now, what ends up happening, and why people say, oh, I should have a buffer, like a contingency for, the contractor's quote. Well, if a contractor's quoting something at, say, $21,000, that's what you're going to pay. So if they say to you, oh, well, it took us, longer to form the foundation, you go, okay, that's great. You quoted this as $21,000. That's what I'm paying, like full stop. They can say, well, we didn't foresee this and this and this, and you go, that's fine. That, now if a contractor is giving you an estimate and they're charging you hourly, that's different. An estimate is something they're going to do to give you a ballpark price for what they're doing. Now, this is where this is where things get a little bit dicey, a little bit tricky. Is that what you should be doing is if you're getting estimates, which, fair enough, if you're getting estimates for a really well-defined scope of work, I would get at least 3 for the same exact scope of work. Make sure everybody's quoting on the same drawings and everybody's quoting the same scope of work. That way you can choose, that way you can see what sort of realm of price you're talking about. Excuse me. I would do that for sure, and make sure that I'm getting the exact same, so I can make an apples to apples comparison. Now, here you have a choice. You can go with the low, medium, or high quote or estimate. Excuse me. What this ultimately depends on is doing an analysis of the scope of work and how much variability there is within that scope of work. So let's say you're doing foundations to lockup. I'm not going to carry a lot of contingency or buffer in those cost codes, simply because those, other than say that if excavation is in there, then yeah, maybe I might, because excavation can be there's a higher variability in cost in excavation. You don't know what's under the earth. You could be pulling up rocks or sand or river rock or silt or clay. It doesn't, we don't know necessarily. Now, we can have we can get some good ideas based on maybe neighboring developments, what might be underneath the ground, but it's still important for us to, there's a higher variability there. So I would carry more contingency in a cost code like that. But foundation to framing to lock up, there's a lot of things you can get quoted in there. So windows, you're going to get quoted. So you're going to get a firm price on windows. Roofing, you're going to get quoted. So you're going to get a firm price for roofing. Foundation, like framing, you can send your plans to a builder supply store, and they'll actually quote out the footing package for you, They'll quote out the building materials that you're going to need because they want your work. They want your business. And so they may have somebody there that will quote that out for you. So you can get a really good sense, probably within 5%, definitely within 10% of what your materials are going to be for foundations, framing, and lockup. And so there's actually a lower degree of uncertainty there. And everything, as long as everything's being built according to the drawings, the plans, then there actually is less variability there. Now, it's important when you're defining the scope of work that you are including things like back framing. So back framing, if you're unaware, is basically extra structure in the wall for auxiliary items that you might be hanging on the wall. So you're going to need back framing in your kitchen for cabinetry, because you're going to need to hang your cabinets on the wall. Lowers and uppers will all be attached to the wall. Bathrooms where you're going to be hanging mirrors and toilet holders and towel racks. You're going to want extra structure behind the wall so that when you put a screw in the wall, you're not just getting empty drywall, because you can't hang anything on drywall, and drywall anchors and screws can be a pain in the neck. Why do that when you can take the extra few minutes and put in some backing behind the drywall and have some structure to adhere to? So that's important. That's an important thing that often gets left out of contractors' quotes, especially in framing stage. So making sure that you're doing a correct scope analysis. But aside from back framing, everything's on the plan. So there shouldn't be a lot of variability within that scope of work. And that means, we're bringing the whole house. These guys hopefully do this for a living, and they should have a pretty solid level of understanding of what labor hours it's going to take to get a house to lock up. So I'm not really a big fan of carrying a lot of buffer and a lot of contingency in cost codes that, with the right scope analysis, should I hate that word, but ought to have ought to have a very little variability. So the question, you might, if you feel maybe 10% in that specific cost code, probably like 5, and but what ends up happening is that people, they carry like these crazy contingencies, and then what ends up happening is that contractors, like if a contractor is quoting something, they're giving you a firm price for that. So there's no reason, unless something changes within the drawings, and that may be cause for a change order. Unless something changes within the drawings, I don't understand why a contractor would ask for more money. But they try. Sometimes they try. They'll go, oh, well, this and this and this took longer than we thought. And you go, okay, well, so, that's how it goes. So a realistic budget buffer, it depends on the scope of work. And if you're getting a quote, then there's zero buffer is required. Okay, I'll do one more question here, and this is kind of an interesting one. We'll talk about this in a case study in a second here. At what stage should I hire an independent inspector, and how often should they be on site? I think so. This may be more of a. I'm in Canada. This may be more of an American thing. Here in Canada, where I have worked, your municipality will have a building inspector, and they are increasingly competent. They're usually quite good. I have family in America, and I'll say they're a lot more loosey-goosey, a lot more lenient, a lot more, it's a bit more of the Wild West in my experience, in that industry down in America, where maybe their municipal inspectors, their regional county inspectors, They may not be quite so. I'm not saying the inspectors themselves won't be quite so diligent, but their processes may be less stringent. Whereas here, they're quite, they can be quite onerous. But so what I think, what people do in these types of situations is they hire what's basically a home inspector. So at what stage should I hire an independent inspector? I would definitely, at the latest, I would definitely do it uh, at the latest in framing stage as a framing inspector. That is when a lot of problems can be identified, and that's still early enough that they can get fixed. You could hire an inspector for foundation. So main inspection milestones would be foundation, framing, as in that would be after lockup. That's when everything is exposed, and you don't have any mechanicals in there, any mechanical, electrical, plumbing in yet, HVAC, nothing's in yet. You're just looking at framing. Then there should be an inspector after those mechanicals are done, and then there should be an inspection after insulation is done, before drywall. And then after that, from an independent inspector, then I would be looking into the finishing stages, because once drywall goes on, now now you can see everything. And so then you're into finishing, and that would be life safety issues like guardrails, handrails, proper connection, connection of services, and so on. So those would be the main thing, really, up until drywall is those are really critical stages for home inspections. It's not that often, because we have here where I live in Western Canada, we have a warranty system that is pretty robust. And what that means is that homeowners have a lot when there's a custom build. For renovations, it's not this way, but for a custom build, the homeowner has a lot of recourse. The builder is carrying warranty for structure for 10 years, mechanicals, and water ingress. So I think mechanicals are 2 years and water ingress is 5 years. So there are a fair amount of protections for homeowners here. But if it's not that way, then hiring an independent inspector is definitely a good idea. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm going to look into a couple of, if I have time, maybe one case study here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it out loud. And I'll probably stop if anywhere I need to. So, a Winnipeg couple's new home purchase turned from a dream home to a nightmare because of construction problems and the lack of home warranty coverage. Right, we just talked about that. So, I think in that city and province, they don't have home warranty coverage, which enables a new home to be, it's like a product, essentially. If there's something defective, then the builders, there are processes in place to get that fixed. So couple's new home turned from dream home to a nightmare because of construction problems and lack of home warranty coverage, something they say no one should ever have to experience. I'll never trust a builder again, said the client, Shattuck. That's why needs to be consumer protection. Okay. Soon after Mannington Custom Homes started building the house, the Shaddocks claimed they were asked to pay extra costs they didn't understand. The couple said they were being billed for added electrical circuits beyond what was called for in the original plans. So, this can sometimes happen, and what ends up happening is, this is specifically to electrical. So oftentimes what happens, and this can be a miscommunication between the builder and the electrician of what they're actually quoting on. So this happens sometimes in custom homes. When you send a set of plans out to an electrician to quote, they will quote what they see. So if you have a really well-developed electrical reflected ceiling plan, RCP, if you have a really well-developed plan that's showing like where individual fixtures are, where certain specific receptacles are, where specific, like how many recessed lighting, how much recessed lighting there is, where all of your electrical needs, as in from a load perspective. If that's really well developed on the plans, then you're going to get a really accurate quote. What ends up happening is that if the plans aren't, and I don't often do this, I don't do RCPs generally speaking, because they, in my experience, they change so much when clients walk through the house. So what I typically advise is for clients to do, to carry to get the we do as much as we can on the plans, on the drawings, but to carry a certain percentage above code minimum. This is one of the only places I actually will carry extra allowances in budgets, but get a certain percentage, say 25% above code minimum, above electrical code minimum. So that would mean the minimum amount of receptacles, the minimum amount of lighting in each room, and the code minimum. Because what you're gonna do is go on a walkthrough once the building is framed up, so that you're standing in the rooms, and you walk through with the electrician and the builder, and you say, okay, this is, I would like a switch here and maybe a three-way switch, so that light can be switched here and switched there. I'm gonna put a lamp over here, so I want a plug there, and I want that plug switched, and I want like it switched here. And you're going to walk through the whole house and identify all your electrical needs. The electrician's going to make marks on the studs, and then he's going to requote that job. And that's when you're going to make up that maybe 25% on that electrical quote. So what I suspect happened here, the couple said they were being billed for added electrical circuits beyond what was called for in the original plan. So they may have gone through a walkthrough with the electrician and added more. If they didn't go through and do a walkthrough, then likely the electrician missed something, or the builder wasn't very clear in what they were looking for. Because when an electrician gets plans that are not super developed, they're just going to quote building code minimum. So the very minimum receptacles allowed or required, and the very minimum amount of lights that are required. So anything above that is obviously going to be more money. So the couple said they were being billed for added electrical circuits beyond what was called for in the original plans. That is, I suspect, one of those scenarios happened. A few months later, the Shaddocks found water several feet deep in the crawl space below the basement floor. Several feet is a lot of water. That's not a trickle. Several feet deep in the crawl space. That can be super, super dangerous. It can be super dangerous if you have any mechanicals in the crawl space, as we sometimes do. If you have electrical, if it reaches any electrical runs in the floor or below the floor, that can be super, super dangerous. Shaddocks hired an engineer to examine the problem. He found damage to the joists from excessive moisture. Yeah, if there's a pool under there, for sure. And discovered the vapor barrier in the basement wasn't sealed. So we've got a few things going on here. I suspect if water is several feet deep in the basement, then we've got more than just like, yeah, that's a lot. So what I suspect may have happened is there is some type of external water source. So either it's a groundwater problem, in which case if you have a crawl space below the basement floor, I don't quite know. If they have a basement, generally you don't have a crawl space beneath the basement floor. It's just dirt, earth. So I suspect, so basically what ends up happening is, and this can happen a lot if you're building by a body of water or you have a high water table, is you've got to be very, very careful to use, sometimes you can use a product called Zypex in concrete. And you can, but you have to also, and sometimes you have to make sure that, well, you always have to make sure that the basement slab is sealed to the walls or the footings. So, but because this is such a large amount of water, I suspect that either there's a drainage issue, as in neighboring properties are draining all toward their home, or they've got a high water table and there's some groundwater issues, because that's a ton of water. And I don't know if it's like realistic, if there's that much water, or they may have a roof drainage issue. That's possible too. If there's that much water, then there's something else going on. And sealing up a basement, I've actually heard of like homes, you have to be really careful if you're building in areas with a high water table, because if you seal everything up, like essentially you can make a boat out of your home. I'm not saying that your home's going to float, but it can cause structural issues. If everything is sealed, it does essentially make a boat out of your house. So it's kind of crazy. Several feet of water is a lot. So we found damage to joists from excessive moisture. Yeah, that makes sense. Engineer also cited violations from National Building Code unrelated to the water problem. Soon after the contract between the Shaddocks and Mannington ended, so they fired the builder. The couple then hired another builder, Park Hill Homes, to repair the basement and finish building the house. According to the Shaddocks, it was about half finished at that point. Then an unexpected twist. The first building company, Mannington, placed a builder's lien on the house in the amount of $38,000 for interior doors and trim, even though the doors had not been supplied by Mannington. That's interesting. So it sounds, so a builder's lien is when a builder hasn't been paid and they file what's called a lien on the title of the property in question. A lien is a flag that it's a legal flag that goes on the title of a building. And it's basically the only way that a builder or trades can recover. It's the only leverage they have in recovering unpaid funds. So to hire a builder, for a builder to put a lien on the house for interior doors and trim, they're basically tying up money. So the client, your client, when you get a lien put on your house, you're not able to borrow against the property. If banks look at your property, if you're trying to take a loan or a mortgage out on a property and there's a lien, an outstanding lien on it, the banks may be legally required to pay out the lien. So to pay out the lien before releasing any money or before lending any money. So, but what ends up happening is that the courts will have to do what's called substantiating the lien. So the courts will decide, they will have to, I believe they might send a representative, an independent representative, to see if the lien is indeed substantial. But oftentimes this takes a long time, legal processes. So the client said, I don't believe this lien could be substantiated, and that's why the money was released back to us. Okay. So they tied up some money. So the lawyer for Mannington Custom Homes, Grant Stephenson, told News the law on the builder's liens is cumbersome because it forces builders to file any outstanding claims within 40 days of the last time on site, or not at all. That is true. So builders have, usually it's 40 or 45 days after they have completed the project to file a lien. In the end, Mannington acknowledged it made a mistake and 2 years later released $38,000 back. So now we've got a bit of a he said, she said going on with the builder. I'm going to skip through some of this. In court documents, Mannington argued that any problems arose from the Shaddocks' unwillingness to make decisions about construction and refusal to pay for extra material. Interesting. The company argued that it tried to settle with the Shaddocks in court. So, interesting. So the unwillingness to make decisions. So this is one of the reasons why I do what I do is sometimes, so when clients hire a builder, they don't, generally speaking, unless they've built before. If they've built several times, then it's much easier. But if most people haven't built before, nobody builds a house. People might build a house like once in their life, if at all. So they hire a builder. The builder, they think, they feel, knows what's going on. They are absolutely hitching their wagon to the builder and hoping that the builder is driving, is in the lead, is going to take care of them. So what ends up happening is that there may be two things going on here. I don't know, obviously. I'm not familiar with this or the people. But the builder is basically saying, well, they refuse to make any decisions. Now, this can be code. This can be disguised as a few different things. Sometimes when the builder says, well, the client didn't make decisions, what they mean is and the client might say, well, hold on a second. You gave us 5 days to choose a kitchen, or you only told us, I've heard of, this has happened to friends of mine, where they said, the builder said, yeah, we'll need a list of your plumbing fixtures by Monday. And the clients didn't have any idea what that meant, or that they had to have, or they didn't have any idea this decision was coming. So the builder sprung it on them and said, yeah, well, guess what? Now they've got to go spend their weekend over or maybe it's a long weekend or something, but now they've got to spend their weekend going to plumbing stores, and maybe they're not able to do that. And maybe they're rushed, or maybe they say, oh, we need a decision by Friday, and it's Monday, and they've got, kids stuff after work all week, and they work full time. And then the clients get put into this position where they have to make a rushed decision, and a rushed decision is a bad decision, almost without exception. And they feel very, very, and the stress level goes like through the roof, because they realize, like, well, now we've got to make a pretty important decision, all our plumbing fixtures, and we have to make it by Friday. So I have to choose all our sinks. Well, okay, there's a lot there, our sinks, faucets, toilets, showers, all of that. It has to be chosen in essentially 5 days, and we have plans already on 3 of those days. So they feel like they were not given adequate time to make a decision, and the builder feels like they gave them adequate time. Well, we gave them 5 days. Well, what's the problem? Builder failing to realize that if you actually care about the customer experience, you should give the clients months to make those decisions. That way they can go to different plumbing stores, they can go to different towns, they can cruise the internet and see what they like, and see the style of room they like, because the fixtures are pretty permanent, or at least semi-permanent, and they affect a lot of the aesthetic and the function of those specific rooms. So to just say, yeah, choose something by Friday, which absolutely happens, and then from the builder's perspective, they might say, well, why don't, they should have known that we were going to need the plumbing fixtures. But the clients, they're waiting on the builder to lead them. They're saying, well, the builder knows what we need to do next, and the builder will keep us apprised of this. So they're waiting on this, and then the builder springs it on them, and now they're stressed. Now they make a rush decision. So I don't know what's actually true here, but it appears, that they say there's a client's unwillingness to make decisions about construction and refusal to pay for extra material. I definitely understand the client's perspective here, but they're saying, why would we pay for extra material I don't know what the contract structure here is here, if it's a time and materials thing, or if it's a quote thing, if it's an estimate thing. So now the family moved forward with a second builder to finish, and new concerns emerged. They overbilled by thousands of dollars. The company apologized, saying that they reduced the labor costs accordingly. Then they checked the attic and found no insulation. That is interesting. So sometimes this happens. So sometimes, depending on your municipality, if the plans call for blown-in insulation, you can't put blown-in insulation unless you use a netting of some type in the attic. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll just, but I mean, they should be putting a vapor barrier up anyways. But sometimes what they'll do is they'll wait till drywall is in and blow in attic insulation into the attic, which is fine as long as it gets done. But if you're batting using bats, then it can go in prior to, it has to go in prior to vapor barrier and prior to drywall. So sometimes there's a miscommunication apparently, and this is the second case study I've looked at where they forgot to put in insulation. So yeah, yikes, that's not great. But one mistake still hasn't been fixed, and it's the costliest, the garage. The Shaddix paid for reinforcing steel in the concrete slab for the garage floor. Obviously, you should never pour a slab without rebar in it, ever. Even for a sidewalk, whatever. If there's any type of structural load, you should have rebar. It'll just also concrete like moves, it shrinks as it cures, so rebar will help to stop it from cracking. Shaddix paid for reinforcing steel in the garage slab for the steel floor. When the slab started cracking, Park Hill sent a letter saying the top mat steel is most definitely in place. So a top mat means a rebar grid in the slab. To be sure, the Shaddix hired a company called Structure Scan, which used a machine to scan through the concrete. The resulting scan showed no indication of a top mat. So that sucks. And it's unfortunately, the remedy for it is jackhammering up a slab, which sucks. Means it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to jackhammer up. It's a lot of work to haul away, and it's a lot of work to put rebar in, and it's a lot of work to re-pour. So I don't know what's going on, but I don't know how you pour a concrete slab without rebar in it. I don't get it. You dump, like nobody thought, hey, wait a second, this is different from all the other slabs we've ever poured, that there's no bar in it. So, tough one here, and there's no consumer protection, so there's no home warranty act in that particular province. So that's not good. So these are, yeah, I mean, really interesting questions, really interesting case studies for sure. So hopefully that was of some value to you, going through some of those, so you are able to not make those mistakes yourself. And again, if you have any questions, if you're going through anything and you feel like something's weird and you don't have anyone to talk to or call or anybody that you know, then feel free to give me shoot me an email. It's all good. And let me know. And let me know if and if certainly I can certainly get the answer for you. So hit me up at aaron@albatrossacademy.ca. And if you're looking for any resources, if you're going through this process and you're looking for some resources, I have a number of resources at the website, albatrossacademy.ca, and things like a homeowner decision checklist so that you can stay on top of all of those decisions. There's got a date field there and a checkbox field. The date field is so you can work with your builder to understand when those decisions are needed by and help you stay ahead of the game as a homeowner. And also, and it'll allow you to make timely decisions when you need to make them, and it'll allow your build to go smoother because the builder won't be waiting for you to make decisions, and you won't feel rushed to make those decisions. I always say the rushed decision is a bad decision. So make sure that baby is free. I also have an estimate and cost tracking spreadsheet for you that has just about every residential line item, so every possible material cost and labor cost that you could have in a residence. And if your builder doesn't give you an adequate spreadsheet, then you can certainly use this one, and you can track your own independent of your builder. You can track money going out against your budget. so that you don't have to wonder like, where the heck are we with our budget? As always, the most transparency is the best. So make sure that you're able to see what's going on, see what's being spent. You know exactly every dollar, every dime that's being spent, and you know how your project is going. So there's an estimate cost tracking data, cost tracking sheet there at albatrossacademy.ca, and also there is a Build on Purpose course, and that course is for people who are in the design process and they want to figure out what values, what project values they actually have. And because I have found that the more clients have a North Star, the more they have a vision of what they want their, how they're going to use their building, what, you know, what they want it to feel like, the better their project goes, and the more able they have a matrix or a rubric that they're able to make decisions using. And so that can be really, really helpful. So that's available at albatrossacademy.ca. And as always, I mean, I put out content like almost every day around this topic. So if you are feeling like this is scratching an itch for you, then please subscribe, and please follow me on Instagram, and we'll have lots of fun too as we wade through this really complicated world. So that's it for me. I'll see you next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. Have a great day.